Can you naturalize if there are issues with your taxes? I'm Erick Widman. I'm an immigration lawyer. And if you have, for example, failed to file an income tax return, or if your filings once or multiple times have had problems within them, this could directly impact your ability to naturalize, unfortunately. And that's because the Immigration and Nationality Act requires a showing of good moral character. And to show good moral character, you must show that you have not committed any unlawful acts. And failing to file taxes and failing to file them incorrectly is, in some cases, an unlawful act. It's a complex area. Taxation, the IRS, is almost as difficult to deal with as USCIS. Both big bureaucracies are tough to manage. So sometimes it's not clear if what you had done or not done with your taxes was an unlawful act. And so USCIS, your officer at the naturalization interview, and when they're assessing your application, is going to have to look at a number of factors to see if you do, in fact, have the good moral character, that your taxes pass the minimum requirements and were not unlawful acts, and that you have good moral character despite some inconsistencies or problems. So some guidance that USCIS gives us under the law is you have the ability to get your tax return situation assessed on a case-by-case basis. So if you're applying to naturalize, your USCIS officer has the obligation to look at your specific situation. And there are some criteria that he or she must follow in determining if you have met your obligation to pay your taxes correctly and that you have good moral character despite maybe an imperfect filing. So let's look at some of those factors. First, the first step the officer must take in determining if your tax situation will disqualify you from naturalizing, he or she will determine whether you committed an unlawful act during the statutory period. So statutory period, if you're filing on your own, is 5 years. If you're filing on the basis of your marriage to a U.S. citizen spouse, that's a 3-year statutory period. So the officer is looking back to that period specifically to see, for example, did you file your taxes? So it's unlawful to have failed to file your taxes. And so if you didn't file your taxes in the statutory period, step one of the criteria is met. An unlawful act was committed. But step two is determine whether that unlawful act adversely affected you and reflects upon your good moral character in a negative way. And what's interesting about this step, this stage of the analysis, is the officer supposed to look to the standard of the average person in your community. So if you're failing to file taxes, maybe in your immediate circle of friends or family, people don't routinely file taxes. Hopefully that's not you. That's against the law. But you can't find any community in the US where it's okay and acceptable not to file taxes. So, however, so that's one example where you're not going to get relief if you haven't filed taxes. But let's say you incorrectly put down a dependent on your tax return when you shouldn't have, and others in the community do the same thing. That is a more minor inconsistency, and that's a widespread problem in many communities throughout the US because the tax rules are difficult and confusing. That might not reflect poorly on your good moral character. Step three, review for extenuating circumstances. Maybe there was something that prevented you from filing on time. Were you in the hospital? Were there changes in the tax law that confused you, that legitimately were confusing to people? So you can get creative with the extenuating circumstances analysis. And if you're in the Ninth Circuit, typically the western part of the US for US Circuit Court of Appeals, you have an additional step built in that the Ninth Circuit judges require USCIS to follow when they're looking at your eligibility and whether your imperfect taxes cause you to have a good moral character problem. So this additional step that can help you is called counterbalancing factors. Your USCIS officer must also give you the chance to show why you have good moral character through these counterbalancing factors. And these factors include education, family background, employment history, financial status, and lack of criminal record. So if you are a PhD scientist or a doctor with amazing education, no criminal record, everything is going well in your life otherwise, and you made a minor error on your tax return, you're able to show the USCIS officer interviewing you through these positive factors that, yes, officer, that was a minor mistake, but please look at my counterbalancing factors. You don't have to say it that way, to show and for you to see that I have good moral character despite this issue with my taxes. The analysis is truly case by case. And so prior to filing, you'll want to see, are my taxes in good shape? Have I filed my taxes? Look at the statutory period in particular, but also keep in mind, USCIS can look beyond the statutory period to the totality of the circumstances of your life to see if there's problems with your good moral character. Best policy is get a tax expert to confirm your taxes are in good shape. And then at your interview, make sure the officer follows through with these required steps, a case-by-case basis to protect you, and an additional step in the Ninth Circuit. I hope this helps. Let us know if you have any questions, and take care.